The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when he heard the soft knock on his apartment door. He wasn't expecting anyone. Most of his friends knew he went to bed early on weekdays. He worked the morning shift at the warehouse, and being tired on the job wasn't an option when you're operating heavy machinery. He got up from his couch, paused his show, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, he could see her standing there, his neighbor from 2 floors down. They'd crossed paths maybe 5 or 6 times in the building's hallway over the past 3 months. A polite smile here, a quick good morning there. Nothing more than that. His heart started beating faster. Why was she here? At this hour? He opened the door slowly, confused but curious. She stood there in a simple jacket and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes met his, and there was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Nervousness? Determination? Maybe both. Hey, she said quietly. I know this is weird. Can I come in? He stepped aside without thinking, his mind racing with questions. She walked past him into his small living room, and he closed the door behind her. The apartment suddenly felt smaller with someone else in it. He lived alone and had gotten used to the silence. Is everything okay? He asked, genuinely concerned. Did something happen? Do you need help? She turned to face him, and that's when he noticed her hands were shaking slightly. She wasn't as calm as she was trying to appear. I've been thinking about doing this for 2 weeks, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Every night I tell myself tomorrow I'll have the courage. And then tomorrow comes and I chicken out. He had no idea what she was talking about. His mind went to a dozen different possibilities. Was she in trouble? Did she need to borrow something? Was there a problem with the building? She took a deep breath, and before he could say anything, she started removing her jacket. Then she pulled her shirt over her head in one smooth motion. He stood there frozen, his brain trying to process what was happening. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. But it was happening, right there in his living room. This woman he barely knew was standing in front of him, vulnerable and exposed, with a nervous smile on her face. I'm tired of being invisible, she said, her voice stronger now. I'm tired of playing it safe. I'm tired of waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. So here I am, being bold for once in my life. He didn't know what to say. His mouth opened, but no words came out. She laughed nervously at his reaction. You can tell me to leave, she said quickly. I'll get dressed and walk out, and we'll pretend this never happened. I won't be offended. I know this is crazy. I know I'm probably making the biggest fool of myself right now. But he didn't tell her to leave. Something about her honesty, her raw vulnerability, her courage to do something so completely out of character, it moved something in him. He'd been living his life on autopilot for so long. Wake up, work, come home, eat, sleep, repeat. When was the last time something unexpected happened to him? When was the last time he felt truly alive? Why me? He finally managed to ask. She smiled, and for the first time that night, it was a genuine smile without the nervousness. Because every time I see you in the hallway, you look at me like I'm actually there. Not through me, not past me. You see me. Do you know how rare that is? Most people look at their phones or pretend to be busy, but you always smiled. You always said hello. You made me feel like I existed. He remembered those moments. Brief, fleeting encounters that he'd never thought much about. But apparently they'd meant something to her. They'd meant enough for her to be standing here right now taking the biggest risk of her life. I've been lonely, she continued, sitting down on his couch. Not just alone, lonely, there's a difference. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like nobody really knows you, like you're playing a character in your own life. I got tired of it. I wanted to do something real, something honest. Even if it's terrifying. He sat down beside her, careful to maintain some distance. His heart was still racing, but his mind was starting to catch up with the situation. I'm lonely too, he admitted. It felt strange saying it out loud. He'd never told anyone that before. I moved to the city for work 2 years ago. I thought I'd make friends, build a life. But it's harder than I thought. Everyone's always busy. Everyone's got their own thing going on. Sometimes I go whole weekends without talking to anyone except the cashier at the grocery store. She nodded, understanding completely. They sat there in silence for a moment. 2 strangers who weren't really strangers anymore, connected by their shared loneliness. What happens now? He asked softly. She turned to look at him, and there was something different in her eyes now. Less nervous, more certain. I don't know, she said honestly. I didn't really think past walking through your door. I just knew I had to do something. I couldn't spend another night lying in bed wondering what if? What if I was brave? What if I took a chance? What if I stopped waiting for life to happen and made it happen? He understood that feeling more than she knew. How many times had he wanted to do something spontaneous, something wild, something that broke the routine? But fear always stopped him. Fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of making a mistake. But she'd done it. She'd pushed past the fear, and somehow her courage gave him courage too. "I'm glad you knocked on my door," he said, and he meant it. She smiled again, and this time, there was relief in it. Me too. They talked for hours that night. About their lives, their dreams, their disappointments. She told him about her job that paid the bills but left her feeling empty. He told her about his family back home that he barely called anymore. They shared stories about bad dates and missed opportunities. They laughed about the awkwardness of this whole situation. Somewhere around 3 a.m, she fell asleep on his couch, wrapped in the blanket he'd given her. He sat in the chair across from her, watching her peaceful face, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Would she regret this, would he? Or was this the beginning of something neither of them expected? As the first light of dawn started creeping through his windows, he realized something important. Whatever happened next, tonight had changed something in him. She'd reminded him that life could still surprise you, that people could still be brave, that connection was still possible, even in a world that often felt cold and distant. He closed his eyes and let himself drift off, knowing that when they both woke up, they'd have to figure out what this all meant. But for now, in this quiet moment, it was enough to know that neither of them was alone anymore. When he opened his eyes, the sun was already streaming through the windows. He checked his phone and saw it was almost 9 a.m. He'd slept through his alarm, he'd missed work. That had never happened before in 2 years, but somehow he didn't panic. He looked over at the couch and saw she was awake too, sitting up with the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring at her phone with a worried expression. "Morning," he said, his voice rough from sleep. She jumped slightly, startled. "Oh, hey, good morning." She looked uncomfortable now in the harsh light of day. All the courage from last night seemed to have evaporated. He got up and walked to the kitchen, needing to do something normal to break the awkwardness. "Coffee?" he offered. That would be great, actually. He busied himself with the coffee maker, grateful for the task. His hands were shaking slightly as he measured out the grounds. What were they supposed to say to each other now? How did you have a normal conversation with someone after a night like that? "I should probably explain," she said from the couch. "About last night." He brought 2 mugs over and sat down in the chair again, the same one he'd fallen asleep in. "You don't have to explain anything. You don't owe me that. But I want to," she insisted. She took a sip of coffee and seemed to gather her thoughts. "I wasn't completely honest with you last night. I mean, everything I said was true, but there's more to it." He waited, giving her space to continue. "I work at the coffee shop 3 blocks from here. You come in sometimes. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, usually around 7. You always order the same thing. Black coffee and a breakfast sandwich." He blinked in surprise. He did go there twice a week. It was on his way to work. But he'd never noticed her there. How had he not noticed her? "I've been watching you for months," she admitted, looking down at her coffee. Not in a creepy way. Just noticing. You're always polite to everyone. You say thank you to the barista. You hold the door for people. You seem like a genuinely good person. Those are rare." "I didn't know you worked there," he said, feeling foolish. "I'm usually in the back, but I see you through the window sometimes. And then I saw you here in the building and I realized we were neighbors. It felt like a sign or something. Like maybe I was supposed to do something about it instead of just watching from a distance." "So this was planned?" he asked, not accusatory, just curious. "Yes and no," she said. "I'd been thinking about it. But last night was spontaneous. I didn't wake up yesterday planning to do this. Something just broke inside me." She set her coffee down and looked directly at him. 3 weeks ago, my boyfriend of 4 years broke up with me. Well, ex-boyfriend now. He said I was boring, that I never took risks, that being with me was like being with a ghost because I never really showed up fully in the relationship. He could hear the pain in her voice. And the worst part? He was right. I've been playing it safe my whole life. I chose a practical major in college instead of studying what I loved. I took a stable job instead of pursuing my dreams. I stayed in that relationship years longer than I should have because breaking up seemed scary. I've been watching my own life happen instead of living it. "So you decided to take the biggest risk possible," he said, understanding clicking into place. "I wanted to prove to myself that I could be brave, that I could do something completely out of character, that I wasn't the boring, invisible person he said I was." She paused. "But now, sitting here in the morning light, I'm terrified I made a huge mistake. That I proved him right by doing something reckless." He set his own coffee down and leaned forward. "Can I tell you something?" "I noticed you too." Her eyes widened. "You did?" "In the building. Every time we passed each other. I always hoped I'd run into you. I'd actually take the stairs sometimes instead of the elevator, just on the chance we might cross paths. But I never had the courage to do more than smile and say hello. I told myself you were probably in a relationship, that you were out of my league, that I'd just embarrass myself if I tried." A small smile appeared on her face. "Really? Really? So when you knocked on my door last night, I was shocked, but I was also relieved in a weird way, like the universe had taken the decision out of my hands." They sat there looking at each other, both processing this information. All those brief encounters in the hallway had meant something to both of them. They'd both been lonely, both been watching, both been too afraid to reach out. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I don't know if this is the start of something or just a crazy moment we'll look back on and laugh about. I don't even know if I'm ready for anything real right now. I'm still processing everything from my last relationship." "That's honest," he said. "I appreciate that. But I don't want to just walk out and pretend this didn't happen either. Because it did. And it mattered. Last night meant something to me. Talking to you, being heard, feeling less alone. That was real." Before he could respond, her phone started buzzing on the couch beside her. She glanced at it and her whole expression changed. The color drained from her face. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. She picked up the phone and he could see the name on the screen. It was calling over and over. She declined the call, but it immediately started ringing again. "It's him," she said quietly. "My ex, he won't stop calling. Do you need to answer it?" She shook her head, but she looked shaken. "He does this sometimes. When he drinks, he calls and texts, saying he made a mistake, that he wants me back. Then in the morning, he acts like it never happened." The phone finally stopped ringing, but then the texts started coming in rapid succession. Even from across the room, he could see her phone lighting up over and over. "Maybe I should go," she said, standing up suddenly. "This is too complicated. You don't need to be dragged into my mess." But something in him didn't want her to leave. Not like this. Not with that look of defeat on her face, like she was already giving up. "Or," he said carefully, "you could stay for breakfast. We could talk more. Figure this out. Whatever this is." She hesitated, phone still buzzing in her hand. He could see her internal struggle. Part of her wanted to run, to retreat back to safety. But another part, the part that had been brave enough to knock on his door last night, wanted to stay. "I make really good pancakes," he added with a slight smile. "And we both already missed work. Might as well make the most of it." That made her laugh, a small genuine laugh that broke the tension. "You missed work because of me." "I'm sorry. I missed work because I chose to. And honestly, I'm not sorry. This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in years." She looked down at her phone, then made a decision. She turned it off completely and set it on the table. "Okay," she said. "Pancakes sound good." As he stood up to head to the kitchen, he felt something shift between them. This wasn't just about last night anymore. This was about two people who'd been lonely for too long, who'd found each other in the most unexpected way, and who were now trying to figure out if something real could come from this strange beginning. He didn't know what would happen next. But as he pulled out flour and eggs, with her sitting at his kitchen counter watching him, he realized he was willing to find out. They spent the rest of that morning together, and it felt surprisingly normal. He made pancakes while she told him stories about the worst customers at the coffee shop. She helped him clean up while he explained how to properly load a dishwasher, something she apparently had strong opinions about. They argued playfully about whether cereal was a soup, and both agreed that pineapple on pizza was perfectly acceptable, despite what the internet said. For a few hours, they were just two people enjoying each other's company. No pressure, no expectations, just easy conversation and comfortable silence. But reality has a way of crashing back in when you least expect it. Around noon, there was a loud knock on his door. Not a polite knock like hers had been the night before. This was aggressive, demanding. They both froze. She looked at the door with obvious fear in her eyes. "Is that him?" he asked quietly. She nodded. I don't know how he knew I was here. The knocking continued, getting louder. Then a voice came through the door, angry and slurred. I know you're in there. Your car's still in the parking lot. Open up. We need to talk. He looked at her, waiting for her to tell him what to do. This was her situation, her decision. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought I turned off location sharing on my phone months ago. He must have still been able to track me. The knocking turned to pounding. Other doors in the hallway were starting to open. Neighbors were peeking out, curious about the disturbance. He made a decision. He walked to the door and opened it, but kept the chain lock engaged so it only opened a few inches. Through the gap, he could see a man in his 30s, disheveled and clearly intoxicated despite it being midday. His eyes were red and he reeked of alcohol even from a distance. Can I help you? He asked calmly. Where is she? I know she's in there. That's my girlfriend. You have no right. She's not your girlfriend anymore, he interrupted. And she doesn't want to talk to you right now. The man tried to push against the door, but the chain held. Who the hell are you? You have no idea what you're getting involved in. She's mine. We've been together for 4 years. You're just some random guy she probably met last night. He felt her come up behind him and she spoke through the gap in the door. Go home, please. You're drunk and you're causing a scene. This isn't you. This isn't me. The man laughed bitterly. You disappear all night, ignore my calls, and I'm the bad guy? I made one mistake. I said some things I didn't mean. And you threw away 4 years because of one bad night. It wasn't one bad night, she said, her voice stronger now. It was months of you making me feel small. Months of you coming home drunk and saying cruel things, then apologizing the next day and promising to change. I can't do it anymore. So you run to the first guy who pays attention to you. Real mature, he'd heard enough. Look, man, I don't know your whole situation, and honestly, it's none of my business. But she asked you to leave. You need to respect that, or what? You'll call the cops? Go ahead. Let them hear about how you're harboring my girlfriend in your apartment. Ex-girlfriend, she corrected. I broke up with you 3 weeks ago. I moved my stuff out. I've been staying with my sister. Last night was the first night I did something for myself, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. One of the neighbors, an older woman from across the hall, appeared behind the drunk man. Young man, I'm calling building security if you don't leave right now. You're disturbing everyone. That seemed to get through to him. He looked around and realized he had an audience. Some of his anger deflated, replaced by embarrassment. This isn't over, he said to her through the door. You can't just walk away from what we had. I already did, she said simply. He stared at the door for another long moment, then turned and stumbled down the hallway toward the elevator. They watched through the peephole until he was gone. Then he closed the door and locked it properly. She sank down onto the couch, her face in her hands. I'm so sorry. I brought this to your doorstep, literally. He sat down next to her. You didn't bring anything. He followed you. There's a difference. But I should have known this would happen. He's been like this since we broke up, showing up at my sister's place, waiting outside my work. I thought staying away for a few weeks would help him move on, but it only made it worse. Does he have a history of violence? He asked, concerned. She shook her head. No, he's never hit me or anything like that. He just doesn't know when to let go. He gets fixated on things when he drinks. In the morning, he won't even remember this happened. That doesn't make it okay. I know. That's why I left. She looked up at him with tired eyes. You're probably regretting last night now, thinking you invited a whole mess into your life. He considered that. Was he regretting it? The situation was definitely more complicated than he'd expected when he opened his door at 11:47 p.m. He'd gotten involved in something that wasn't really his business. He'd made an enemy of a stranger who clearly had issues to work through. But when he looked at her sitting there, vulnerable and apologetic, still wrapped in his blanket from last night, he didn't feel regret. I'm not regretting anything, he said honestly, but I think we need to be real about something. This situation is complicated. You just got out of a relationship that clearly wasn't healthy. You're dealing with someone who isn't respecting your boundaries. And we barely know each other, she nodded. You're right. This is all too much, too fast. I shouldn't have come here last night. I was running from one problem and created another one. I don't think you created a problem, he said, but I think maybe we both need to slow down and figure out what we actually want here. What do you want? She asked. It was a good question. What did he want? 24 hours ago, his life was simple. Boring, but simple. Now he was sitting with a woman who'd turned his world upside down, whose ex-boyfriend just threatened him, who represented possibility and complication in equal measure. "I want to get to know you," he said finally. "The real you, not just the brave version who knocked on my door or the scared version dealing with her ex. I want to know who you are when you're not running from something or running towards something." "I don't know if I know who that person is anymore," she admitted. "Then maybe we figure it out together, but slowly. As friends first. No pressure, no expectations. Just two neighbors who talk sometimes and drink coffee and see what happens." She smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her all morning. "I'd like that." "Good. But first, we should probably talk about safety. If your ex knows where you are and he's showing up drunk, that's not okay. Have you thought about getting a restraining order?" She sighed. "My sister keeps telling me the same thing. I just hate the idea of escalating it to that level. He's not a bad person. He's just hurt and handling it badly. His hurt doesn't give him the right to harass you, or to show up at my door making threats." She knew he was right. He could see it in her face. "Okay, I'll talk to my sister about it. She's a lawyer. She'll know what to do." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about practical things. She called her sister and explained the situation. He gave her his number properly this time, not just as the neighbor in 4B, but as someone she could call if she needed help. They talked about boundaries and what it meant to take things slow. By the time evening came, they both felt better. The morning's drama had forced them to be honest about the complications, but it hadn't scared either of them away completely. As she finally got ready to leave, properly dressed this time and without the dramatic entrance of the night before, she turned to him at the door. "Thank you," she said, "for not judging me, for standing up for me this morning, for being understanding about how messy all of this is. Thank you for being brave enough to knock on my door in the first place. Even if the timing was complicated," she laughed. "Timing has never been my strong suit. Mine either." She left, and he watched through the peephole as she walked down the hallway to the elevator. When she was safely inside, he finally relaxed. His phone buzzed with a text. It was from her. "Made it back to my sister's place safely. Thank you again for today." "For everything," he smiled and typed back. "Anytime. Get some rest, and let me know about that coffee sometime this week." "It's a date." "Well, a friend date. A slow, no pressure, figure things out coffee. Perfect." As he got ready for bed that night, his apartment felt different, less lonely. The couch still had her blanket on it. The kitchen still smelled faintly of pancakes. Evidence that someone else had been there, that his life had been disrupted in the best possible way. He didn't know what would happen next. The situation was still complicated. Her ex was still an issue. They both had baggage to work through. But for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to tomorrow, to the possibility of something real developing from this strange, unexpected beginning. Sometimes the best things in life come from the moments that catch you completely off guard. The moments that don't make sense, that are messy and complicated and scary. The moments when someone is brave enough to knock on your door at 11:47 p.m., not knowing what will happen but hoping for something better than what they're leaving behind. He fell asleep that night with a smile on his face, grateful for unexpected moments and second chances. The coffee happened 3 days later. They met at a neutral spot. Not the coffee shop where she worked, but a small place downtown that neither of them had been to before. Starting fresh in a new space felt symbolic somehow. She looked different than she had in his apartment, more put together, more like the version of herself she showed to the world. But he could still see the nervousness in how she gripped her coffee cup, how she glanced at the door every few minutes like she expected someone to walk in. "He's still texting," she admitted after they'd settled into conversation. "Not as much, but enough that I know he hasn't moved on." "Did you talk to your sister about the restraining order?" "I did. She's helping me file the paperwork next week. It feels extreme, but she made me read through all his texts and calls from the past month. When you see it all written out like that, it's pretty clear he's not going to stop on his own." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. "That's a brave choice. I know it's not easy." "Nothing about this has been easy." She laughed without much humor. "I keep thinking about that night I showed up at your door. How different things might have been if I'd just gone home instead. If I'd dealt with my loneliness in a normal way, like eating ice cream and watching sad movies. Regrets? He asked. She thought about it. No, not regrets. But awareness, maybe? That I was running from something and I ran straight into something else without thinking it through. I'm trying to be more intentional now. To make choices because they're right, not because I'm afraid or lonely or trying to prove something. That's mature of you. Therapy helps, she admitted with a small smile. I started going last week. Turns out years of making yourself small in a relationship does a number on your self-esteem. Who knew? They talked for 2 hours that day, about her therapy sessions and what she was learning about herself, about his job and how he'd been thinking about going back to school for a degree in engineering, about their families and childhood dreams and all the normal things people talk about when they're getting to know each other. It felt different than that first night. Less intense, more grounded. They were building something on purpose now, not just reacting to impulse and loneliness. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Coffee once a week, sometimes twice if their schedules aligned. Text messages throughout the day. Nothing too heavy, just sharing little moments. A funny customer at her work. A near accident at his warehouse. Photos of terrible parking jobs in their building's garage. They were becoming friends. Real friends. And it felt good. One evening, about a month after that first night, she invited him to her sister's place for dinner. She wanted him to meet the person who'd been supporting her through everything, and she wanted her sister to meet the guy who'd somehow become important in her life. Her sister was exactly what he expected. Protective, sharp, and immediately suspicious of him. She spent the first hour of dinner asking him pointed questions about his intentions, his past relationships, his views on everything from finances to family planning. It was like a job interview, but more intense. I'm sorry about her, she whispered to him when her sister went to the kitchen for dessert. She's just worried about me. She should be, he said. She cares about you. That's good. When her sister came back, she set down a pie and sat across from him with a serious expression. Okay, I'm going to be direct with you. My sister has been through a lot. She's working on herself, and that's great. But I need to know you're not just some rebound, that you're not taking advantage of someone who was vulnerable. He met her eyes directly. I'm not. And I hope I've shown that over the past month. We're taking things slow. We're friends first. I'm not pushing for anything more until she's ready, and maybe not even then if friendship is all this becomes. Good answer. She cut into the pie. But I'm watching you. One wrong move and you'll have me to deal with. I'd expect nothing less. Her sister smiled then, a real smile. Okay, I like you. You can stay. The evening relaxed after that. They ate pie and watched a movie, and he got to see her in her element, comfortable and laughing with her sister, making inside jokes and telling embarrassing childhood stories. This was the version of her that wasn't running or hiding or being brave. This was just her. As he left that night, she walked him to his car. Thank you for putting up with the interrogation. Your sister is great. She reminds me of mine, actually. Overprotective, but in a loving way. I'm lucky to have her. She leaned against his car. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you happy with how things are going? With us being friends? Or do you wish I'd never knocked on your door that night? He thought about how to answer honestly. I'm happy. Are things complicated? Yes, is this how I expected my life to go? No, but I like where we are. I like getting to know you. And I don't wish away that night because it led to this. To us being here right now. She smiled, and in the streetlight he could see tears in her eyes. I needed to hear that. Some days I think I ruined everything by being so impulsive, that I should have just worked on myself alone before dragging anyone else into my mess. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to open that door. I chose to make pancakes the next morning. I chose to keep showing up for coffee dates. Those were my choices. Thank you for choosing me, she said quietly. They hugged goodbye, and it was comfortable and warm without any of the tension or uncertainty from before. They were figuring this out. Slowly, messily, but genuinely. Another month passed. The restraining order went through, and her ex finally seemed to get the message. The text stopped. He didn't show up at her work anymore. Her sister reported that he'd apparently started dating someone new, which brought its own complicated feelings, but mostly just relief. She moved out of her sister's place and into a small studio apartment in their building, just 1 floor down from him now. They helped her move in on a Saturday, him and her sister and a couple of her co-workers from the coffee shop. It felt like a new beginning for her, living on her own for the first time in years. That evening, after everyone else had gone home and her apartment was a disaster of boxes and furniture, she knocked on his door. This time it was a familiar knock, and he opened it immediately with a smile. "Need help unpacking?" he asked. "No, I need a break from unpacking. And I realized something today." "What's that?" "It's been exactly 2 months since I knocked on your door that first night. 2 months since I did the scariest, most impulsive thing I've ever done. And you know what? I'm glad I did it. Not because of how it started, but because of where it led." He invited her in, and they sat on his couch with drinks and takeout from the Chinese place down the street. "I've been thinking," she said, "about us, about what this is and what it could be." His heart beat faster. "Okay, I'm not ready for anything serious yet. I'm still working through stuff in therapy. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of that relationship I was in. But I also don't want to keep putting my life on hold, waiting until I'm perfectly healed to move forward." "That makes sense. So I was thinking maybe we could keep doing what we're doing, being friends, but maybe acknowledge that there's potential for more someday, when the timing is better, if we both still want that." He smiled. "I like that idea. No pressure, no timeline, just seeing where things go." "Exactly." She raised her drink. "To terrible timing and better friendships?" He clinked his glass against hers. "To unexpected moments and second chances." They ate Chinese food and watched a movie, and everything felt right. Not perfect, because life rarely is, but real. Honest. Good. As she left that night, she paused at his door. "Hey, can I ask you something else?" "Sure. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't knocked on your door that night? If I'd chickened out like all the other nights?" He thought about it. "Sometimes. But then I remember that you did knock. You were brave. And that changed both of our lives. So I try not to wonder about the what-ifs. I'd rather be grateful for what actually happened." She nodded, smiling. "Good answer. Good night, neighbor." "Good night." He watched through the peephole as she took the stairs down one floor to her new apartment. His life had gotten so much richer since that night 2 months ago. He'd made a real friend. He'd been part of someone's healing journey. He'd learned that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. And maybe someday, when they were both ready, they'd explore what else this connection could become. But for now, friendship was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.